we were on leave.
Right, okay. Are you taking lots of surreptitious photographs of us?
Well, it's lovely for grandson, if you don't mind.
I'm sitting here, all double chins. If I wanted to be really nice.
Okay, could you sit up and then make yourself look really beautiful?
Is that yours or
That's mine.
No, I can't.
Okay.
Vivian thinks it's just repositioning in order to make herself look the most beautiful.
It's not so I look beautiful. Just so I lose half a dozen, the dozen chins that I've got. I'll be honest.
Okay, go on about.
So you were in Hong Kong until 39.
Yes.
Till the war.
And then we came on leave. Leave being 3 months here.
Okay, and that was unrelated to outbreak of war, or it was just before that outbreak?
No, it just happened that we were in here.
Okay.
In this country when war broke out.
Okay, right.
In fact, we were on holiday in France because we had a lovely holiday on the north coast of France, and I remember crossing the channel and my mother holding me by the neck like this. It was so crowded, everybody escaping away from France when the war broke out.
I see. This is when you were coming back then.
Not when no, I didn't go back at all.
Coming back to London, coming back to England.
No, we just came back and went straight to Glasgow, where they both came from.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yes.
But you're coming from France back to the UK.
Just on holiday.
Yeah.
Just a fortnight.
So do you remember what you were doing when the war broke out?
I was on the ship being hung on to by my mother. I was 9.
Yeah, and then you got on a boat to Hong Kong.
My father said, okay, if we're going back to Hong Kong, we'll all go together.
Yeah.
So off we went.
And this was soon after the outbreak of war, was it?
Yes, like a week.
Really? Wow.
Yes, and there was an Empress of Britain boat. We got on the boat, and that was lovely. We were all going to take this wonderful liner back.
And who else was on the boat? Just lots of random people.
Mostly, no Chinese. Yes, mostly China. I don't know who they were. It was just.
But people going to Hong Kong.
Yes, people going to Canada.
People going to Canada, maybe.
And then, of course, they were going to Canada, and we got off at Canada and travelled across Canada, and it was marvellous. I mean, we travelled. My father was an educator by nature, so he insisted that we saw chipmunks, insisted that we saw the Rockies, insisted that we saw everything. Oh, we went to a rodeo in Calgary Stampede, and he was absolutely determined that we'd make the best of this particular opportunity.
And how long did you take going across Canada? Must have been ages now. A month. Wow.
Yes, and then we got to Vancouver to go the last little bit to Hong Kong across the Pacific.
Yeah, so this is.
And it was evacuated, women and children.
Vancouver was, or Hong Kong was?
Hong Kong was.
Hong Kong was.
So we couldn't go.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So my father had to go back for his job, but we were left in Canada.
And he was director of education at this point.
No, later. He was still a headmaster at that time.
Okay. And
wait, can I just ask, what school was he headmaster of in Hong Kong?
A school in Hong Kong, I don't know.
It wasn't you went to the Peak School, but he wasn't headmaster of that.
No. That was a. You see, this is colonial times. Yeah. It was a British school.
That's true.
For British children.
Yeah.
English medium.
Yeah. So he was headmaster of a China. Was he
have to turn your head inside out to what colonial life was like.
Was he headmaster of a?
We are all right. They're natives.
Was he headmaster of a Chinese school or a British school?
Well, he was headmaster at that stage of an Indian school.
Indian school?
Yes, all Sikhs.
Oh wow.
He was terribly knowledgeable about religions as a result.
And then...
He was very knowledgeable about everything, wasn't he? You knew him. Could tell you about anything.
Really?
Oh yeah.
And in fact, I don't think I know anybody to this day who knew as much about as much.
He's a real polymath, absolutely, real polymath, absolutely unbelievable.
He was a terribly intelligent man, full of educational interests. So he wanted to tell you and her and me and everything of all the stuff he knew.
And in fact, just to interject a funny story,
yes,
I was doing.
I was in Canada for several years.
This was about to tell a funny story.
Just that funny story about Grandpa and helping me with my homework. I had to do an essay for school about undersea exploration.
No, it was about no human beings or something, wasn't it?
No, it was anyway, underwater exploration of some kind. And so I was about 9 or something, and I wrote this essay.
14.
Oh, well, anyway. And he said, you need to include the phrase hermetically sealed windows. And so I did. And of course, my teacher came back, 10 out of 10, wonderful phrase. Where did you get this from? And it was all him.
He did all your homework at that time.
Yeah.
Taught you an awful lot.
He did, yeah, no, he was, yeah, everything. Sorry, Toby,
No, that's
go
right
on.
away.
So then we were in
What
Canada.
time? Sorry, what time should we head off?
1:15.
1:15.
Why was we,
Could
why
we
we
do it 1:10 just so I have somewhere
Yeah.
to find a
Yeah,
place and
yeah,
make
yeah,
sure?
yeah.
do it now?
1:10. No, in 10 minutes, 12 minutes.
10 minutes. Okay, do
12
it here.
minutes.
No, we're doing.
No. We'll set off at 1:10.
Oh, and when are you doing yours?
1:30.
Okay.
So I'll go and find a place to set up.
Yeah.
Like just to make sure.
It's fine.
In the,
Anyway, carry on. Yeah,
in
yeah,
the
it's fine.
Beetle Witch, they have those little
Yes,
houses.
exactly, yeah.
Okay, and then James was taken prisoner of war. Or something.
Yes.
Jim.
Whilst he was.
I called him Jim. I didn't call him Dad or Daddy.
I really called him Jim.
Yeah.
I call him James just because I think of Rory as Rory James.
Oh, right.
Yes,
Yeah.
he was called after.
Yeah. And
he was a
so
laugh.
that was whilst he
laugh a
was
minute,
head of.
he was.
Was he?
When he wasn't furious, he was laugh a minute, wasn't he?
And then Hong Kong was being evacuated.
Yes.
And he was in
Had
Hong
to
Kong.
stay because
And you weren't there, of course. But
No.
from what you understood, he was in there for a while before
he was
the
in
Japanese
prisoner
invasion.
of war. Well, the last thing that happened, because they'd all been given special jobs at the Japanese takeover, he somehow or other was one of the last people to go into the camp.
But when was the Japanese takeover? Was it soon after he got there? Or was he there for a while?
He was in the
Japanese
camp
You have
for
to look it up. It's-
3 or 4 years. It was something like 41, 42.
Really?
He went back to Hong
Yeah.
Kong, and pretty soon after
That the Japanese took Hong Kong,
Yeah.
and he was the last person into the camp. Mum will tell you why.
Yeah.
Granny will
That's
tell you
a
why.
very funny story.
Yeah, go on.
Because he was, if anything, extremely practical.
And also, he was actually a Japanesophile. He loved the Japanese,
Yeah.
and all his friends were Japanese. So I think they were pretty lenient with him
Yeah.
as well.
So
So-
he's the last man into the prisoner of war camp.
Yeah.
So he thought something could be made of this. So he always said because of his naughty childhood, he commandeered a lorry which he knew how to start without a key. He said it was because of his bad behaviour as a child in Glasgow. Anyway, he started this thing and went to all the houses of his friends and himself.
Friends who'd already been incarcerated.
They'd all gone ahead
Yeah.
into the camp. And he knew how to let himself in because he could also pick a lock very well.
Yeah.
And he picked the lock, went into people's houses, took a lorry load of mattresses
Yeah.
and everything out of their medicine cupboards. Everything.
Yeah.
Everything you can think of.
And tins of food and things like that.
What?
Tins of food and things like
There's
that.
tins of food, but much more medicines.
Mattresses and
Really?
medicines,
He
yeah.
was the hero of the camp
Mm.
because he had medicines for diabetics and everybody you can think of.
Mm.
All sorts
So he
of...
then took this lorry and turned up at the camp.
He went to the camp gates
Mm.
and he said to the Japanese man there, the Japanese man said, "Show your pass." And he said, "Official business," in English. And the chap said, "All right." And
Amazing.
he did have the way, if he said official business,
You believed
wouldn't
him.
stop him. would you?
And then, but this was before he'd been taken into the camp.
Then
himself.
he went into the camp forever. Yeah.
That was him.
That was
Before,
him.
yes.
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
Yeah.
But he took in all the medicines, and the medical officers in the sanatorium said without what he brought
Mm.
and the mattresses for the sick people to
Mm.
lie on, they would not have managed.
Mm.
He had a
Wow.
lorry load of stuff,
Yeah.
and he was so pleased with that. I mean, he said, nobody thought of it. They all walked in just doing what they were told.
Mm.
And he said there was an opportunity there, so I took it.
Mm. And the next time you saw him was when?
When he was released from that,
Which
in
would have been
1945.
1945, right at the end of the war.
And he'd lost. Well, he said, "I'm coming back." Everybody flew back from all those prisoner of war places, but he said, "I'm coming back on the boat because I'll get properly fed there, and I will put on some weight." And so he did, and it was.
And actually, that was tremendously wise
Yeah.
because his brother George flew back and was skeletal.
Yeah.
He was 6'3" or something and 4 stone or 5 stone.
Yeah.
Leave that, Mum. Leave that, Mum.
That's BBC News, isn't
And
it?
yeah, it's just a news
I
item.
want to hear what's going on.
Okay.
Sorry. BBC says it received 6 missed